everyone, my name is Zara Thurman, and I was lucky enough to be assigned Alice Neel. I will be sharing some of her artwork with you via this book that I borrowed from the Irving Library, and this is a really good book. I would suggest that if anyone who's interested after the presentation, they check it out. It's a very good book. It has a lot of good information and extra tidbits that maybe other books may not have. Alice Neel, she was born in 1900, and she's an American Expressionist painter. She was really known for her portrait pictures, and she did do some still lifes and some cityscapes and some landscapes and some still lifes, but she was really known for her portraitures, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. She was also known for painting primarily everyday people, family, and friends, and she painted a few celebrities and political figures and activists later towards her career. And she was also known for painting a few of her subjects in the nude. She had a way about her as far as communicating with the subject and really easing them into that atmosphere of just comfort and vulnerability. So if she felt so inspired that that person should be painted in the nude, then she would start working her special brand of communication, and before you know it, they would be disrobed and her subjects would have a lovely picture at the end. She grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. She was the fourth of five children, and her family really, they were a traditional family, and so her parents didn't really believe that she should pursue painting, but she always knew that she wanted to paint from a very small child. And so in order to try to appease her parents, when she was in high school, she took a part-time job as a clerical secretary. And sure enough, she became bored and a little frustrated with it. It just wasn't her cup of tea, so to speak. After high school, she enrolled in the Pennsylvania School of Design, and which is now known today as Moore College of Art and Design. She went there to develop her craft more, and to be around other people who had the same passion. It was during this time in the 20s where she not only grew as an artist, but she did face some personal tragedies. She had two attempts at suicide. One of her first baby, it passed away from diphtheria. And then she had a string of some rocky romances during that time, but it was also during this time where she was developing her craft, where she began to really try to venture forth and become more exposed to the art community. And this was particularly valuable for Alice, in the 1920s, because during this time, during the beginning of the 20th century, the expressionist painters who were women, they tended to paint things more feminine in the sense of, fruit or flowers. And they were expressionist painters of that time who were men. They tended to paint more self-portraits. And Alice was very aware of this, and she actually didn't paint her first self-portrait until she was 30. And she really expressed her femininity, not necessarily through still lifes, but some of the experiences that she was having in life, she would, of course, express that through her painting. And so one of the paintings I do want to show you where she does express her femininity, if you will, it's called the Well Baby Clinic, and this was painted in 1928. In this particular picture here, you can see it looks a little graphic, but this was during her time where after her baby had passed away and she had spent some time away, this is just her reflection on what she had seen in that particular facility. So I hope everyone can see that clearly. But again, if you'd like to look this up online, it's Alice Neel again and Well Baby Clinic. Alice, her career by the 1930s, it started to peak a little bit. It began to rise, and she started doing more minor exhibitions. This is where her still lifes came into play and landscapes. And she did a very, at the time, kind of a controversial piece. And that piece is called Nazi Murder Jews. And that's a pretty harsh title in and of itself. In this particular piece, again, it's an oil on canvas. This particular piece, as you can see, it's dark. She uses dark colors, and she does a very good job with the thin lines she uses for the face to really capture the emotion of the people that she saw. So this cityscape, if you will, is a little bit different than our picture here, which is, is of a person. But she did do a few of these. Another picture I'd like to share as far as with this, as far as her painting showing city life. This is the synthesis of New York, the Great Depression. And this is an oil as well. And it's this picture right here. I know it's a little smaller. And this is another piece that she became known for. Now, in the 1960s, her career, she was having exhibitions regularly, on a regular basis, and she really took off from there. It was during the 1960s and the 1970s where in 1974, she actually had her first major art exhibition at the Whitney Center in New York. And she also received an honorary doctorate degree from the Moore College of Art and Design, which she had attended years ago before. And then she also received another doctorate degree from the Kansas City Art Institute. So that's pretty impressive in and of itself. Again, we have to remember that during this time, women were still really struggling to find their voice in what was perceived as a man's world. But she was regularly exhibiting and showing her artwork. Later in her life, I had mentioned that she didn't do her first self-portrait until she was 80. Alice Neel, she died when she was 84, so it was right at the end of her life is where she really went out there and finally decided to do her own self-portrait. Excuse me. She painted some celebrities, and one that I'll name that everyone should, which is probably everybody's probably familiar with, is Andy Warhol. And you can see one picture, the picture that was taken with a camera, and then you see the picture that she painted. And when I look at this, I do see some areas where it looks like it's over or under exaggerated, but in either case, you can see how she really she still captures him, even with some exaggerations or under exaggerations here and there. So that, I think that's a really awesome skill set to be able to do that, whether you inflate or deflate attributes of a person, and you can still capture them. She painted a couple of political figures as well. Ed Koch at the time of New York. She also had 2 covers that she was commissioned for by Time magazine. One in particular was Kate Millett. She was a women's lib activist. And the banner for that Time magazine, it says Politics of Sex. So that was very controversial and very forward thinking for the time. But she had 2 covers of Time magazine. Alice Neel, she definitely has shown through her work, from what I saw and what I read about her, that she would call herself or refer to herself as the collector of souls. And I actually thought that was very sweet, because she wasn't interested so much in just the landscapes. I mean, she had a few, but she was really involved with people, and she wanted to capture people as she saw them in her on her own terms. I would encourage everyone to take a minute when you can and go out and look at some of Alice Neel's artwork. If I were able to, I would definitely try to own a piece. She has a collection when she lived in Spanish Harlem in New York City. She has a small series of paintings where she really captures the essence of that neighborhood, and she really takes you to that time and place in New York City, and you can almost feel the cultural vibe of who the people were and probably even some other living conditions. So again, Alice Neel, and thank you so much.